and after that we will have possibility to ask questions. You see there is a chat in Google Meet, and you can write your questions in this chat to the speaker you want to ask. Today we will focus on the following topics: how the COVID-19 crisis impacted the Black Sea region, what are the main threats and challenges to the security in the Black Sea region, how Russian military and economic efforts promote stability in the region, and does NATO have appropriate instruments to deter Russia and prevent the transformation of the Black Sea to Russian land. Okay, now we have more than 22 persons, and I want to give introductory speech to Mr. Marc Johnson. He's Alumni Relations Specialist from George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies. Marc, do you hear us?
Oh, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, very good.
Okay, great. Is my camera on? I tried to get it to work, and it was telling me that it wasn't working. Can you all see me, too?
No. No, we don't see you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I tried like hell to get it to work. It works on life size, but for some reason Google is not letting me activate it. I'm trying to, but for some reason it's not working out. I apologize for that.
Okay. Okay, so.
But anyway, so what I want to do first is I want to thank the Center for International Security, along with our alumni, Valeriy, Kostya, and Nika, and Ivan for setting this up. I think this is a great idea. This is the kind of creative activity that we'd love to see from the Marshall Center, from all of our alumni, taking charge and coming up with these great ideas. And so what we like to do is support your programs either with the Marshall Center or even completely independent of the Marshall Center in any way that we can facilitate and support. It's something we like to do. What we tried to do was get a faculty member to moderate this, and we had yesterday Professor von Munchow. He had agreed to do it, but unfortunately he was called away by his German military superiors for an obligatory meeting this morning, and so he sends his apologies, but he was forced to decline. So I have to apologize to all of you. He's not able to participate. But what I wanted to do is, again, thank you all for organizing this meeting. This is not going to be the last one. There's actually going to be more, because the Marshall Center is going to organize more meetings like this, and we've already started to do so since May. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about what the Marshall Center plans on doing online for webinars over the next several months until we're able to physically bring people back to the Marshall Center for our resident programs. We're going to have several webinars scattered throughout the summer that are going to rely heavily on Marshall Center alumni. And the reason being is that we can't recruit and bring new participants to the Marshall Center. So, of course, this is a very creative process, and I'm always open to good suggestions. But just briefly, that's what we have planned for the Marshall Center right now. So, again, no physical activities here in Garmisch, likely for the rest of the summer, but we're planning on starting to visit all of our countries in September. And so that's what we're planning on doing. Anybody have any questions about that? No? Oh, okay. So I have nothing else to add about our programs. If any of you, later on have any questions, please let me know. Oh, but I did want to mention that there's going to be the annual alumni Eastern European and Black Sea Regional webinar that is going to take place on 10 June. And from each of the countries, Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria, we've already selected 5 individuals who are going to participate in this webinar. And this will be a 2-hour event in place of a 2-day event, which is normally how we do it, but obviously we can't do that online. So it's going to be greatly reduced in scale, but that program is on full speed ahead. So that will happen according to plan. So just an update on that. Okay, that's all I've got. I'll turn it over to you guys now.
Okay, thank you, Mark, very much for the introduction. Then now we can move to the next phase of our online seminar. We will start with some speeches from our participants. As moderator, I want first of all congratulate our participants from Georgia on Independence Day yesterday, and want to give floor to Dr. Nika Chitadze. He is president of the George T. Marshall Alumni Union in Georgia. Nika, do you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. And first of all, of course, I would like to express my gratitude, of course, for the organization of such important event. Thank you to each of the Ukrainian colleagues, my friends, for the organization of the next important event. And of course, we, the representative from Georgia, express our readiness to be fully involved and integrated in the event today. Thank you, Marc, also, Marc, for joining us. And of course, so I hope that today we will have very fruitful and interesting event. So, can I start my presentation?
Yes, of course, Nika.
Yeah, okay. Dear friends, with your permission, I would like, of course, to discuss the several issues related to the COVID-19 and its reflection on the international security and on the Black Sea security. With your permission, I would like to mention, first of all, of course, that COVID-19 has created huge problems for the international community in general, taking into consideration the fact that according to the estimations of the World Bank, the world economy, GDP of the world will be decreased for about 3%. If we take into consideration the fact that the whole volume of the GDP of our planet is about $86 billion, we can, by this way, to assume that the world within the period of 2020 will lose about $5 trillion. Yes, okay. It's let's say, there's a more optimistic prognosis related to the decreasing GDP for 3%. It's in case if the international community will manage to defeat the COVID-19 till 2020. With your permission, I would like to mention that during the world economic crisis, within the period of 2008-2009, the world GDP decreased only for 0.8%. So what does it mean by this way, the decreasing of the world economy? It means that there will be about 50 million jobless people. And with regard to the international tourism, it will be decreased for about 20-25%. Again, in comparison with the period of 2008-2009, during this period, international tourism decreased only for 4%, but now there are possibilities of decreasing the international tourism for about 25%. At the same time, of course, it's necessary to point here, yes, about this information war, which is going on among all the different countries, yes, especially by this way, the propaganda for the official Kremlin, the blaming by this way the United States of America is having the biological laboratories in the different regions in the world, including by this way the biological laboratory on the territory of Georgia, Lugar laboratory. We know that according to the Russian official, by this way the Lugar laboratory, by this way they were going on for a long time period, for several years, yes, okay, some experiments over the people, and after by this way those people were infected by cancer and different kinds of oncological kind of problems, and several days ago again it was some official declaration from the Russian side about the Lugar laboratory. We know at the same time that blaming by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs official representative against the United States of America is spreading the COVID-19, that American military spreads COVID-19 on the territory of China. This declaration was held when, in the beginning of the March of 2020, I mean the period when is the first half of the March, 90% of all the disease by the COVID-19 was coming on the share of the People's Republic of China. Today, you know, here's how the situation is changed by this way. Yes, okay. So there is, with regard to this information, or most correctly, disinformation company, again, unfortunately, it's continued, but my point of, and at the same time, you know, about some declarations about the possibility, other declarations, yes, for example, the winner of the Nobel Prize, yes, okay, French virologist, by this way, also mentioned here about the possibilities of the artificial spreading of the COVID-19, etc., etc., but in my point of view, of course, those rumors by this way, yes, first of all, there are some rumors that some mass media means that some countries conduct the information policy, some countries, some people, some scientists even want to attract the attention by making some scandalous by this way declarations, etc., because for nobody, in my point of view, it's acceptable let's say here, the spreading of COVID-19 by this way, I mean, artificial, yes, okay, but particularly, for example, with regard to the China, you know that the export volume of the export of China within the first quarter of 2020 decreased by about 13%, and within the 2019, we know here that volume of the export of China prevailed $2 trillion. Of course, with regard to the United States of America, so you know, here about the huge problems that U.S. government releases about $3 trillion for the support its whole population. Even for Russia, we can blame Russia, for example, is of course occupation of Crimea, occupation of Abkhazia, Tver district. But from the other side, with regard to Russia, of course, Russian economy will also suffer very much as a result of COVID-19, taking into consideration that Russian income part of the Russian budget for about 37% is dependent on the export of oil, taking into consideration the fact that world oil prices decreased from $65 per one barrel as of November, December of 2019 till about $20 per barrel. Yes, we can see by this way, yes, of course, that the Russian budget will also suffer. And at the same time, of course, with regard to natural gas, official representative of Russian Gazprom by this way also made the declaration that about decreasing the demand of the Russian natural gas for about 18%. Accordingly, by this way, volume of the export of Russian gas also will be decreased in this case. And at the same time, we know here about many other diseases by this way, yes, in the world, yes, okay, which have first of all natural character, yes, okay, but not artificial. Starting from the 5th century before Christ period, Athens plague, which by this way took the lives of about 30%. Antonius by this way plague were dated with the 2nd century in Roman Empire by this way when about 5 million people died when population of the world was about 200 million people. Plague, for example, in the middle centuries in Europe, which by this way a number of the victims by this way prevailed 30 million people, etc., etc., etc. So it's with regard to the global problems and with regard to the Black Sea region. Yes, of course, what should we say here related to the Black Sea region? First of all, in my point of view, because of the economic problems which will be faced before the Russia, and I mentioned about those problems, in my point of view, Russia will be forced to decrease its military expenditures, because we know that as to the 2019, as volume of the Russian military expenditures, Russian defense budget was about $70 billion US dollars. But despite of it, of course, Russia will try, of course, by this way to implement some its imperialistic ambitions tensions in the Black Sea region, but somehow, I mean, the level of pressure can be somehow decreased, and despite the fact that you know that there are about 100,000 Russian military servicemen which are deployed in the Black Sea equatorial, and we know here that about 30% of the Russian military servicemen, they serve in the southern military district of Russia, so-called Yuzhny Voyenny Okrug, yes, okay? Among the whole Russian military forces, we know that the whole number of Russian military forces is about 789,000 military servicemen, yes, and about 30% is concentrated by this way the southern military district with the center in Rostov, which includes by this way territories of the northern Caucasus, to occupy territories of Georgia, occupy territory of Ukraine. About 80% of the Russian military fleet potential is concentrated in the Crimea Peninsula, as we know here, where the number of the Russian military servicemen is about 30,000 or more. With regard to the two occupied territories of Georgia, we know here that in each occupied territories of Georgia, number of Russian military servicemen is about 5,000 militaries. I would like also to mention here that with regard to the Black Sea region, of course, geopolitical interests of the leading geopolitical powers towards the region will not be decreased. Of course, USA will still, by this way, will keep its geopolitical, geostrategic, and geoeconomic interests towards the Black Sea region, taking into consideration, by this way, the decreasing of the military potential, Russian military presence in the region. We know here, for example, several American ships which entered in the Black Sea equatorial. Yes, okay, Donald Cook, for example, in the beginning of 2020, by this way, yes, okay, and other, by this way, military ships. At the same time, we know here about the increasing military potential of USA on the territory of Romania and Bulgaria to NATO member countries. Furthermore, we can mention here, of course, here about the fact that USA is interested in the successful implementation of the transport and energy project through the territory of through the Black Sea region. The same interest have European Union, for example, related to the implementations energy projects alternative to Russia. I mean, for example, Trans-Anatolian gas pipeline project, potential of which is from 16 billion to 32 billion cubic meters of natural gas. It is planned the transportation of gas from Azerbaijan to the territory of Georgia and Turkey, and after to the southern part of Europe through the program TAP, by this way, Trans-Adriatic pipeline, as we know here about it. But China has its own interest, by this way. Yes, we should take into consideration here that One Belt, One Road initiative. China also is interested in the revival of this great Silk Road, by this way. Yes, and China is interested in putting the investments in the Georgian ports, for example, we can mention here. So what can we say here about the security environment in the Black Sea region? Anyway, of course, situation is tense, taking into consideration in general, by this way, that Russia, by this way, there are about 100,000 Russian military servicemen. From the other side, with regard to NATO member countries, Bulgaria, for example, number of military servicemen, 37,000 military servicemen, Romania, 84,000, Turkey, 639,000 military servicemen of Turkey. We know here about initiative of NATO, I mean the Warsaw Summit, World Summit, where by this way it was determined, let's say here, the main the priorities of the NATO, will be by this way strengthening the position of NATO in the Black Sea equatorial, by this way. So accordingly, we can say here that COVID-19, of course, somehow will be reflected on the security environment in the Black Sea region, but from the other side, geopolitical interests of the leading geopolitical powers towards the region, also foreign policy and national security priorities of the Black Sea coastal countries will be the same. Ukraine will keep its Euro-Atlantic intention, the same with Georgia. Very much, of course, is dependent on the election which will be held in Georgia, yes, okay, and Azerbaijan will try, I mean, Black Sea Caspian, Azerbaijan will try by this way to keep its balanced policy between West and North. Armenia by this way will try also to be more strategic partner of Russia Federation. So from the other side, Moldova is a neutral country, but it partly will keep also its European intention by this way, yes.
Nika, we don't hear you. Okay, something happened, I see.
Marc, switch off the microphone.
No, it's probably that we don't hear Nika.
Yep. Nika, we are hearing you. Just say something.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, Nika, yeah, we hear you now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can continue.
Sorry?
Yeah, you can continue because the sound was stopped from you.
No, yeah, I have stopped now by this way and listen to you, of course, and after comments. Was voice okay before during my presentation? Was okay? Did you hear me?
Yeah, now we hear you very good.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I have finished already, yes, on this way. I think that we can listen other presenters. Or
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next speaker will be Vitalii Martyniuk. He is acting executive director of the Center for Global Studies, Strategy 21. Vitalii, do you hear?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our Center for Global Studies Strategy 21 is monitoring security situation in the Black Sea region, and we issue the Black Sea Security Journal on a quarterly basis. We analyze the situation in the region and around the region in different countries. So our conclusion is that the security situation in the Black Sea region remains unstable with the tendency of further deterioration. The Russian Federation did not stop or even change its plans for aggressive policies and further militarization of the region. Even today, Russia uses tools of hybrid war against Ukraine and other Black Sea countries. It is continuing its effort to split NATO and the EU. The coronavirus outbreak has shown that the possibility of rapid transition from globalization to deglobalization. And using this situation, Moscow began to persuade the West to lift the sanctions against Russia, hiding the real reason Russia enters into a severe economic crisis, caused by fall of oil prices, collapse of Russian ruble, and COVID-19 epidemic. At the same time, Putin's regime is not going to give up its plans to restore the borders of Russian Empire within the borders of Tsarist Russia. In military sphere, Russia does not demonstrate any intention to halt its occupation, military occupation of the Black Sea region. The Russian military exercises in Crimea and the Black Sea area conducted in the first quarter of this year indicate the signs of Russia's preparations for military operations against Ukraine in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. For example, in January this year, large-scale joint exercises of the Black Sea Fleet and Northern Fleet of the Russian Federation were conducted in waters of the Black Sea to the south and southwest of occupied Crimea, including rocket firing from water, land and air. About 40 ships, one submarine, more than 40 aircraft and helicopters of different types were involved. Another exercises. In March, Russia conducted military exercises in occupied Crimea with landing actions. According to the defense bloc, 1,500 paratroopers from Novorossiysk, 300 vehicles and 15 transport aircraft mimicked the capture of Ukrainian Kulbakina airfield in Mykhailo. This airfield is important for defense of the south of Ukraine. These exercises testify the preparation for landing operations in combination with an offensive operation from the territory of occupied Crimea in the direction of Kakhovka, Ukrainian city where the main gateway of the North Crimean Channel is located. So the goal is to unlock the water supply to the occupied peninsula. Occupied Crimea is becoming more and more enormous burden for Russia, which is carrying out plans to seize control over the main gateway of the North Crimean Channel, restore water supply to the peninsula to overcome severe shortage of water for Crimea. Controversial statements of some Ukrainian officials about the need to restore water supply have faced stiff resistance of civil society, expert community, some Ukrainian politicians, and this issue is suspended but has not disappeared. The period of September-November before and after holding strategic exercises Caucasus 2020 may be particularly dangerous. The only naval presence of naval forces is deterrent factor for Russians' aggression actions in the region. In the sphere of navigation security, Russia continuous blockage of the Sea of Azov. Vessels carrying export from Mariupol and Berdyansk were delayed at the exit from the Sea of Azov by the Russian Federation. Russia continues to officially create A2AD zones in the Sea of Azov and the northern part of the Black Sea, obstructing navigation. Vessels routes from the Bosphorus to Ukrainian ports run through a narrow passage between the Snake Island and the occupied by Russia shelf of the Odessa gas field, which is only 25 kilometers wide. This creates potential threat to navigation to and from Odessa, Mykhailo and Kherson ports of Ukraine, which account up to 95% of export and imports turnover. The problem of vessels which are in the Black Sea without flags and illegally visit the Crimean ports requires resolution at the international level. In energy sphere, Russia's action to destabilize Ukraine and divide the Black Sea countries using energy tools came to fruition in January this year, when the Turk Stream gas pipeline was officially launched in Istanbul. This pipeline took over volumes of gas transit through Ukraine for the needs of Turkey, Bulgaria, Greece, and Northern Macedonia. There is a danger of further reduction of Russian gas transit through Ukraine as a result of the construction of the second line of Turk Stream, its continuation through Bulgaria and Serbia, which is expected by the Serbian President Vučić to be launched in October this year. In humanitarian sphere, Russian occupation authorities in Crimea continues measures to replace population on the peninsula in order to legalize its occupation. As of March this year, 270 Russians were relocated to the peninsula, excluding military, security, and other officials seconded to Crimea. The process of such displacement changed the democratic picture in the occupied territory and violates the Geneva Convention to the protection of civilian persons. It becomes apparent that release of Ukrainian prisoners of Kremlin is possible under increased international pressure on the Russian leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitalii, very much. Now we move to our next speaker, Valeriy Kravchenko, Director of the Center for International Security. Valeriy.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to see all of you here on our web seminar. Everyone hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, I would like to underline some scenarios how we could prevent all this dangerous picture which Vitalii emphasized and Nika also outputted in the reports. And probably we have to be the proactive. When I say we, I mean Georgia and Ukraine first of all, because if we could speak about the brotherhood nations in this region, it's obviously not Ukraine and Russia or Georgians and Russia, it's Georgians and Ukrainians. It's about our special relationships, I have to say, and understanding of the threats we have in that region. So, making a very brief resume from what said Vitalii, I would say that we have the four probably main challenges regarding the Black and Azov Sea. First of all, it's blockade which we have with the Kerch Strait, and actually we de facto have the annexation of Azov Sea. Our military boats, Ukrainian military boats, have no possibility to pass the Kerch Strait after the incident, after the provocation Russia organized in November 2018. Obviously, de jure, we still have enough instruments how to influence, but de facto it's very tough to do. The second issue is about the economic blockade, the future probably economic blockade of our fairway, 50 kilometers fairway in the Black Sea towards the Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea, and about the threat of landing to the Zmyny island of Russian forces. And it's a very difficult issue, not from the military even side, but from the economic, because it's clearly will kill the Ukrainian export-import within the ports. The third issue is the militarization of Crimea, and the military threats we will have from the high level of militarization regarding the even some kind of humanitarian issues like water supplies to Crimea, and how Russia could use these humanitarian issues to press to make tensions on the international community regarding the Ukraine and this probable operation with the Kakhovka we are still having in mind. And the last one is about the social disturbing, is the social tensions in the southern Ukraine. Let's say starting from Odessa region with a high level of minorities representation, to Nikolaev, to Kherson, and to Zaporizhia, the region we are naming Tavria. So we will probably have problems with the economic indicators in the end of this year. In the end of this year, we will have local elections, in Ukraine, so it's a good time for revanche of Russian forces in southern and the eastern Ukraine, and the southern Ukraine is territory of a great disturb from our point of view. It's about the scenarios, it's about the threats, and I appreciate that the authority, now I'm here representing the NGO, so I could speak more honestly, let's say. I appreciate that our authority understands clearly all that security threats and challenges, and we are Ukraine developing the new national security strategy, which have to be presented probably in the summer this year, and that strategy identified that Russia uses the Black Sea, Caspian region as a bridge to the Balkans, to the Mediterranean, to the Middle East, and fuels long-term conflicts and maintains a military presence in that region. And the militarization of occupied Crimea is growing, and it's part of that scenario. And the threat of free navigation in the Black and Azov Sea remains. It's very clearly a biggest threat we have now on the southern flank. And that strategy identified two Black Sea countries, Georgia and Turkey, as strategic partners of Ukraine. I could say additionally Poland also is put it as a strategic partners especially for Daniel Szeligovsky from PISM. And also one more country, Azerbaijan, which actually located in the macro region of Black Sea Caspian region, also I would put it as a strategic partner. Actually Ukraine declares the development of cooperation with NATO member countries in ensuring the security in the Black Sea, while maintaining the strategic goal of joining to alliance as the main idea of new strategy. If we are talking about the military doctrine, last military doctrine of Ukraine was adopted in September 2015, and it also refers that unresolved issues regarding the delimitation of the state border of Ukraine in the Black and Azov Sea and to military political challenges that may escalate into the threat of military forces against Ukraine. Particular attention is paid to the defense of land in dangerous areas in Odessa region and in Mykhailo region, areas of the Black Sea and Azov Sea. Actually, revival of the naval potential of the state development of our Ukrainian Navy aims to ensure the defense of the coastline of the Black and Azov Seas, the exclusive maritime economic zone in the Black Sea, as well to allow involvement the international operations, NATO and EU operations. It's also what we have in, I'll put it in the military doctrine. What we can do, actually I divided all kind of scenarios of Ukrainian behavior on some blocks. So first block will be regarding the ensure of safe economic activity of Ukraine in the Black and Azov Sea. Of course, about the Azov Sea, it's very hard to speak honestly because of the blockade of Kerch Strait. We are just in subjective situation now, and we have to address the International Problem Maritime Organization with proposal to introduce permanent monitoring of freedom and navigation in the Black Sea and the Azov Sea. We could use also the agreement between Ukraine and Russian Federation cooperation in the use of Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait is a joint use of the Azov Sea. I mean that we have to do something with this agreement because Russia is not having any kind of obligations under that agreement. Probably Ukraine have to be more decisive and, for example, to make a request on establishment of reasonable period for consideration of response of Russia. We have to check what we have to do with our position about the delimitation of Azov Sea, and then we can exit from this agreement after this term will terminate. And also regarding the military cooperation, we have to do a lot with our joint military efforts in the region. Unfortunately, before this situation, we achieved with the Kerch Strait in November 2018. It was a more passive position, even not only from Ukraine, for NATO countries also, because it was the shift to Baltic security, for example, and a small shift to Black Sea security happened only after this provocation of Russian Federation. So we need to develop, of course, our Ukrainian Navy. We have the concept of Mosquito fleet with small boats. We have good communication with the United States on that issue. United States supplied 2 boats of Island class to Ukraine. It's a small assistance. I know that even Georgia have more Island class boats which presented from the United States. But still, we need to expand the naval presence of NATO states in Black Sea. Despite this convention of Montreux we have from 30th years of the previous century, and the limitations we have with this convention. We need to create a multinational joint military units, probably with Georgia. Also, I believe that such units have to achieve the interoperability, the NATO standards, combat coordination, approximation to the standards of NATO, and the special issue is the joint cooperation in special operation forces. We could create and manage. Alternatively, we could consider establishing a joint Ukrainian, Georgian, Moldovan military exchange center and platform for international exercises in region. And it's also have to be organized in close collaboration with the NATO countries. We have to initiate, it's from my perspective, initiate to establish the establishment of permanent naval unit for joint patrols in the Black Sea between navies of Ukraine, Georgia, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey. Alternatively, we could launch a special naval format in Black Sea as such kind of operations to maintain freedom of navigation. I know that Vitalii Martyniuk and the center he is represented is accepting this initiative and enforcing this initiative in the works of the strategy 21. And actually, we could try to conclude a bilateral agreements also on military, political, and defense cooperation between Ukraine and Georgia, between Ukraine and Romania, and we have the precedent is the general agreement signed in December 2016 between Ukraine and Poland, actually. So we have a kind of precedent. We need to enforce our efforts in that region. Regarding cooperation within NATO, we need to invite NATO to consider involvement of Ukraine and Georgia in development of alliances strategy in the Black Sea region. We know that NATO developed the Black Sea package, so-called, for last April. So it's more than 1 year it's dealing with this Black Sea package. But we need to use our opportunities, our possibilities from Ukraine and Georgia, how to add our efforts to implementation of the package. And probably from Ukrainian part, it's a good idea is to consult with alliance on deployment of NATO's military infrastructure directly on Zmyny Island, on the Snake Island, as a preventive message to Russia, to deter Russian aggression. We have another organization which could be involved with some results. It's OSCE. OSCE organizing a Venice Forum for the Mediterranean. So I believe that we need a special maritime forum for Black Sea. It could be located somewhere in Odessa, in Varna, in Constanta. But we need such kind of forum, and we need to discuss events and to discuss risks from the Russia and from the Russian behavior in that region. Also, we could speak about the establishment of special group for Black Sea and Azov Sea. We have the same group on the Baltic Sea, so-called OSCE Baltic Group. So the main idea is the development of a code of conduct to prevent military incidents. Of course, it's also regarding the Russian behavior. We could speak about the Guam and a new dimension of the activities in Guam. Guam was created as some kind of economic organization, but because the security climate is not so pretty good, we could speak about some new options in the activities of that organization, probably even including the exchange of experience and implementation of joint projects on deoccupation, reintegration of territories, and supporting of the internally displaced persons. And also the last point is about the research projects. Of course, all we have in that region is hybrid. And Russia is implementing their policy not military, not only economic, but also in psychological sphere, in historical sphere, proacting the influence. So we need to be proactive in building the early warning system and react properly. So it's a good idea to establish Black Sea Hybrid Threat Research Laboratory. For example, somewhere in Odessa or in Poti, and it will be modeled as a NATO centers of excellence and involve some donors from Alliance and contact to the European Center of Combating Hybrid Threats with a proposal to support that initiative and to act jointly. So, just finishing a few words to the finish my report. Our proactive policy is really what we have to do now in the Black Sea region, including regional initiatives. While we are not being proactive, Russia will be proactive, and actually we need to strengthen the security climate. We need to explain to our NATO allies, to our NATO partners about the importance of that region, and to enforce all possible efforts to deter the future aggression we are expecting from the Russian Federation in the nearest future. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeriy. And now I would like to give the floor to Volodymyr Dubovyk. He is director of the Center for International Studies, Odessa, Mechnikov National University.
Okay, thank you, Andriy. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we hear you good.
Right, thank you for coming up with the idea of this workshop. It's very interesting so far. And thanks to everyone who was involved, including Marshall Center, of course. And let me start by saying that I'm joining you in congratulating our Georgian friends on their recent holiday. There is a special place that belongs in our hearts for Georgia, to Georgia rather, and every time Georgians celebrating something, we are mentally with you, unfortunately not physically, because the transportation is now, interrupted, but in many other ways we are with you, my friends. Let me first address some of the questions that you put up forward for the discussion regionally for this workshop, and talking about the COVID-19. among other things. And of course, the COVID-19 crisis is impacting the Black Sea region. It impacts different countries in different ways, obviously, and some are more affected and some are less. But it affects the entire region as well. In terms of seeing where it struck harder, we can say that perhaps that's Turkey, which registered higher numbers. But also, it's not surprisingly, Turkey is a big country. It has a lot of big population. And also the most hard-hit city is Istanbul, which is obviously a big city with huge population, very densely populated. So it's hardly surprising that Turkey is registering the highest numbers in the region, perhaps. But then, of course, Russia is also here in the region, and their numbers is even bigger. And of course, when we talk about Russia, we don't even know. We don't even know what are their real numbers. What we're seeing are official numbers, and there are always reasons to believe that the real numbers are even higher. Unfortunately, in the recent few days, similar suspicions have emerged with regard to Ukraine as well, where there was, sort of some journalists and some observers have noticed some manipulation with numbers with regard to cases of COVID-19 in various regions in Ukraine, and that's not good. And we're already hearing chatter, rumors among the European diplomats that the whole business of opening up transportation with Ukraine and borders for Ukrainians might be impacted if indeed the fact of Ukrainian numbers and Ukrainian figures on COVID-19 are not being truthful. So I think our government should come up clean and actually provide more objective and up-to-date information on that. Other countries in the region have been also hit by COVID-19 to some degree, of course. We've heard about several cases in Romania, for instance. Romanian case, the hardest case was in around city of Suceava, which is very close to our city of Chernovtsi, and a lot of people in Chernovtsi, and also a lot of people who are observing these trends, they've mentioned and they've noticed that there might be some connection with big numbers in Suceava on one hand, on the one side of the border, and then Chernovtsi being the hardest hit, obviously, by far, the region in Ukraine. So that might be a trend as well, because there's a lot of transportation, incorporation, business, trade, and so on. On the other side of the Black Sea, Georgia has done really well, actually. Up to the certain moment, at least, it was always seen as some kind of a model, some kind of a pattern to follow, some kind of a country which done, uniquely well, really well, was the threat of the COVID-19. And actually, Georgians were not afraid of coming forward with some strict measures, including, for instance, for some days that we can remember, and Georgians, of course, can testify to that, banning private cars, travel in private cars, even, which is a hard measure, hardly really administered many other countries in the region. And then what is troubling right now is there's some alarming numbers and figures coming from Armenia. It seems like they are having some kind of upsurge of the COVID, but we'll see where it goes. And of course, for all of us in this region, it's very early to speak of anything. In a line of suggesting that the epidemic is over, that COVID is over, that we're through it. No, we are not. We're still in the middle of it. It's too early even to talk about the second wave because we're not quite done with the first wave. And we're already seeing a lot of disruption caused by it. And, of course, by measures that had to be put in place to fight COVID. And speaking of that, of course, the Black Sea region countries, many of our countries, if not all of our countries, have been depending on tourism. Very much so, and that's an industry, that area, that sector, big hard hit. That's a problem, and looking forward, it's not quite clear when we'll be opening up, when the tourism will be back to the normal. I don't think it will be back to normal anytime soon. I don't think we will have any big, serious numbers resembling those that we had before COVID-19 struck. This is a problem for a lot of countries, some more, some less. But Turkey, for instance, is struggling. Even though Turkey, of course, is a big economy, it's not just about tourism, but Tourism is a big part of the Turkish economy anyway. And they're struggling and they are trying to open up. And just today, I think there were some reports that Turkey is planning to open up for international transportation flights on June 10th. And we'll see how that goes. I think even the most optimistic scenario is that some limited amount of tourism allowed from July 1st or something. And even that is not granted. So, I mean, that's a big issue. And a big issue for our economy is, of course, that the factories and plants have stopped and other enterprises as well. All sectors of our economy have been affected. Ukrainian economy, for one, has been in a downturn in terms of economic growth already, even prior to COVID-19, before COVID-19 struck. So, of course, there will be even more harm to the Ukrainian economy after we reopen. And, of course, we are altogether, the whole world is in a new crisis, no doubt about it. Is it a recession? Is it a full-scale crisis? It's hard to say. It looks like a full-scale crisis. You know, in U.S., for instance, which I watch closely, there have been talks already for weeks, if not months, of another Great Depression. We'll see where that goes. And that's a problem for all of us because, of course, it means a lot of less trade. It means less ships. It means less work for our ports, and so on. I mean, the transportation of goods is ongoing as far as I can see. If I walk to the seaside here in Odessa, I see ships coming and leaving, and there are some waiting outside the port to unload or load up their cargo, but the numbers are not too good. So, I mean, this sector of economy is not paralyzed, but it's definitely affected. And that means less trade, less supply, less demand, less works, less job places, workplaces for people working in our countries. So that's a problem. And with regard to anything else which is not COVID-19 related, the challenges and threats are clear. We are living now in the Black Sea, which is very volatile. Black Sea region is volatile, which is unstable. In our cases, Black Sea post 2014. I guess for our Georgian friends, it's actually post 2008. There are no rules; they can be broken. I mean, one country in the region can take part of territory of another country in the region, so no rules, and that's a problem. So that means there is a lot of anxiety, and that means that hard security is back. Because actually for decades, we've spoken mostly at conferences talking about Black Sea security, about soft security issues. But now we are back to square one, and we're talking again about how many airplanes and battleships each country has, and so on. The cooperation in the region is affected. There is lack of trust here in the region. Again, for years and years, we've been talking about certain correlation of, let's say, cooperation trends on one hand and confrontation on another, and now we are not optimistic. And as many of my friends already mentioned, there is militarization of Crimea, militarization of the entire Black Sea area. There is a little regional arms race. I mean, countries in the region are not sitting nicely and calmly, and they're looking for ways to improve their defensive capabilities, specifically with their navies, but not just their navies. Apparently, even for some countries in the region, being parts of NATO is not enough. And that brings us to one of the questions that we have here. Question number 4, does NATO have appropriate instruments to deter Russia and preventing the Black Sea from becoming the Russian lake? NATO probably has instruments, but the problem is that the question is, does it have political will? Does it have a strategy? Does it have guts, to be involved with the Black Sea region? In a way, it is involved in the Baltic Sea region, actually. I've been pointing out to this discrepancy, this difference between what NATO does in the Baltic with 3 Baltic country members, with air patrols and everything, where you have a strategy, where you have it working, you have different countries members, implementing certain measures and taking part. Nothing of that sort is actually happening here in the Black Sea. I mean, there are some things here and there. There is NATO Standing Maritime Group 2 coming to Black Sea from time to time, actually quite often to Odessa and so on, but definitely not on the same scale as it is in Baltic. And that's surprising because, to some extent, because, that's exactly here where the annexation of Crimea took place, so you would expect NATO to take more bold, systemic, strategic steps here in the region, and it's not doing that. So once again, I think NATO has enough instruments, but is there a consensus? Is there coherence within the alliance that something should be done in the Black Sea? Or is an alliance still in the business of trying not to make too much noise here, not to create waves, not to irritate Russia, not to annoy Turkey as well, which is very ambivalent, as we know, in terms of NATO operations and NATO functions here in the region, being a member state, of course, but at the same time very ambivalent in terms of what the bigger role for NATO should be here in the region. Russia remains a destructive, assertive player, obviously. For now, it seems that Russia is satisfied with the status quo, Black Sea region being some kind of a condominium or, the tandem between Turkey and Russia being the major players, but they have appetites, they have ambitions, and they have some certain things to back it up with. It's not just military, it's also, of course, economy, it's also energy. Enough been said about energy already today, especially by Vitalii, but also the Russia, of course, has many levers that they can pull in terms of promoting and advancing their interests here in the region. And most finally, perhaps the U.S. is still a player, not to the extent that many of us would like it to be, but they are here. They are coming with their ships to the Black Sea. They're coming, battleships, of course, naval ships. They are working with certain countries in the region, with Georgia, with Ukraine, with Romania. There is Task Force East in Romania, so basically based in Romania. So that's important. But also, U.S. is hit. U.S. is hit by indecision. U.S. is hit for years now with this idea of withdrawing from certain areas around the world, and who knows if Black Sea is one of those. I actually now write a big chapter about the U.S. role in the region here. And also Trump, of course, is not helping in terms of his America first, U.S. first concept and idea of withdrawing American presence around the globe. And most finally as well, COVID-19 is a factor. Affecting, first of all, now all eyes of Americans are on COVID-19 for the time being and for the coming months for sure. They also have an election year. So, there are many factors that are limiting U.S. role, U.S. presence here in the region as well, unfortunately. And most final comment as well is that we are paying attention on hard security issues now, and now at the expense of the soft security issues. So now we are all about battleships, and now we are suddenly forgetting about things like energy, migration, trafficking in people, trafficking in drugs, trafficking in arms, environment, which is still a huge issue for all of us here in the region, of course, because we have terrible levels of pollution in the Black Sea, and we've reached long ago the conclusion that we should all together be dealing with these issues. And now, of course, most of those issues are being neglected, unfortunately. And most of the structures that once were formed to deal with the regional security are dormant or inefficient or not effective. Who talks now about the Black Sea Harmony or Black Sea Forum? They're nowhere to be seen, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate as well. And some sub-regional structures as well. Guam is barely alive, only formally, unfortunately. 2 countries at least, Moldova and Azerbaijan, are basically not taking part, frankly. Georgia and Ukraine, we are, but that's a long-standing Georgian-Ukrainian partnership that we have in the region. So, there are not too many optimistic features the way I see them, and the COVID-19 definitely does not make our life easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Volodymyr. And now we can go to the stage where we ask questions, make commentaries, and now it's more open conversation. So please, if you want to say something, you can. You can switch on my microphone. Mark Johnson, do you want to ask something?
Yes, please. First of all, Vital, Valeriy, Volodymyr, Nika, thank you so much for your presentations. Absolutely outstanding, very informative. And the first question I have is actually a favor. I have to write a report and send it up the chain of command about this conference. And so if I could somehow get a copy of your notes that you used for your presentations. Now, I have a decent memory. I also write notes, but there's no way that I can physically capture all the information. So I need your help here. So if it's possible, and if you're able to do so, could I get copies, either in Word format or PowerPoint or PDF, I don't care, have those emailed to me so I can go ahead and write a good summary report so I can send that up my chain of command. And then I'll make sure to issue that report to you guys as well, so that way you see that, you know, what I've sent up is the same thing that you're seeing. So that's the first thing that I wanted to ask. The second thing, Volodymyr, I largely agree with your assessment of the state of U.S. involvement in the region. It is a bit meager, especially militarily. But part of that is that we are under constraint from a naval treaty being able to pass ships into the Black Sea. Turkey, of course, being a NATO member, we're just not able to run roughshod over these people, and that's just not going to happen anytime soon. But what I can share with you, and this comes from guidance from the Office of the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon, that orders the Marshall Center to pay attention to certain countries of particular interest in developing defense capabilities and otherwise security capabilities. And there's a ranking of those countries, and there's a list of like 10 countries. Country number 1 is Ukraine. Country number 2 is Estonia. Country number 3 is Georgia. So we're actually very much interested in the Black Sea region, and unfortunately, I would agree with your assessment that there's really no grand strategy from the U.S. side right now. It's been quite haphazard and increasingly chaotic, and I'm hopeful that that will change at some point. I don't know when or how that will change, perhaps through our elections this fall. And, you know, and if we get a different presidential administration that's more coherent and more consistent, you know, then perhaps that'll help. But there are areas in which we also have to engage the Russians for other interests that we have that aren't in the Black Sea, but further east. Na Vostoke, Dela Tonke. And that's Afghanistan. And so we're kind of playing very carefully with the Russians, specifically in order to achieve some of the other goals that we have that don't involve the Black Sea. So I do understand people's frustration at being able to see what the Americans are capable of doing and yet not doing. But rest assured, we're not leaving the area. And in fact, we're still going to continue to engage the Black Sea region. That's why I'm involved with you guys here today. I mean, I like you guys. I mean, you know, you guys are great anyway. I would be involved with you guys if it had something else. But anyway, we're going to stay involved. Again, I'm coming out in September to Georgia and to Ukraine, and I will keep doing so. And I will keep the U.S. embassies involved in your Alumni Association activities as well, because I coordinate all of our conferences with them. So you will continue to be on our radars, and we will continue to provide some kind of assistance. And, of course, we will continue to invite you and recruit new participants to our resident programs for security capacity building. That will continue. You don't have to worry about that ending. So that's what I have to say about that. Over.
Okay, some comments, maybe. Yeah. Okay, who wants to comment or has a question? Okay, I see Artem Fylypenko. I see Daniel Shelegovsky. Okay, Daniel Shelegovsky has a question. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Do you hear me? Yeah, I'm sorry the camera is off because my connection is sort of not properly working today. Well, hello everyone, good to see you again. The question is to Ukrainian colleagues. Is there any coherent Ukrainian strategy and a coherent response towards the situation that's going on in Crimea? I mean, deployment of Russian troops, this whole series of exercises, etc. I don't know, maybe is there a bilateral cooperation between Ukraine and NATO members, United States, other countries? I mean, what is Ukraine trying to do with the whole situation?
Okay, who wants to answer this question? Volodymyr? Okay.
I will start probably, and then my colleagues will add a few words. If we are talking about something such great like a coherent strategy from Ukraine, it's difficult to say. We have some mentions about this situation which happened with Crimea in different documents of strategical level, but still we are expecting the new strategy, national security strategy, will be published probably in a few months. I hope so, in the summer that year, and of course the new strategy will underline the militarization of the Crimea and the problems regarded from that militarization is the main challenge. And we have to understand that the last military doctrine was published in 2015. It is the starting years, 2 years of the occupation, of the annexation of Crimea. So it was too hard to intend that Russia very quickly understands how to use this peninsula as a polygon, even if to deploy the nuclear weapon. Or prepare such opportunity, how to deploy the nuclear weapon on the peninsula and to make a threat to the not only to the Black Sea, Caspian countries of that region, but to European countries. It's southern, let's say, castle. If we are talking about the northern castle of Russian presence, military presence, it's Kaliningrad area. And the southern castle is the Crimea. And but still we have a lot of military trainings. The last Sibris scenario, which was organized the last year in Odessa, it was about some scenarios of landing forces in the delta of Danube River, and how to prevent this all issues regarding the opportunity of Russia or forces to land on Ukrainian territory. Of course, we are expecting a few new military trainings. I could say that we have in this calendar for that year the training on defense of infrastructure. In Odessa in October, it's how to defend the crisis infrastructure, critical infrastructure in Ukraine. And it's also the military trainings we are co-organizing with the NATO partners. So we understand, clearly understand that we need a strategy, but it's for our shame, Ukrainians not always so good ordered to act properly and to create in a short time such kind of strategy we really need.
Okay, Volodymyr.
Right. I just follow second to what Valeriy, and I agree with him. I think there are probably some papers, formal doctrines and strategies that are out there, but not in a way that we would need some kind of a coherent, systemic, intra-agency document that would be a guideline for Ukraine's policy of the occupation of Crimea. Unfortunately, that one is lacking for years now, and the previous administration of Kravchenko was criticized often for that, for not coming up with one, and the new one obviously hasn't come up with, in a year that they've been in power, they haven't come up with a strategy. And that's always, the source of friction there, because Ukrainians don't really know what are we doing with Crimea. I mean, what is our policy with regard to the water supply or the electric energy supply? Often, our policy on Crimean Tatars, we love them, we celebrate those holidays with them, we call them brothers and all. That's all true. But what are we doing to help them also to withstand that pressure that they're finding themselves under in Crimea? For instance, in a few recent prisoners exchanges, they're not there. I mean, that's becoming very insulting, upsetting, really, to a lot of Crimean Tatars. Why are Crimean Tatars, who actually dominate in numbers in terms of people taken by Russian occupiers in Crimea, are not included in exchanges? I mean, is Kyiv seeing them as citizens of Ukraine? Why are we not pressing Russia to also include Crimean Tatars and others? And I mean, of course, Vitalii Martyniuk can say more than I do, even in terms of why is no more pressure from Kyiv coming on Dudka and Bessarabov, and why are they still not addressed by Kyiv properly? And that's all emanating from a lack of this big systemic strategy, where you would have different points. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing that. And of course, the fight for our people, who were imprisoned in Crimea, I mean, thanks God, since office back, we're all happy, but what about all others? That's a problem. So actually, with naval doctrine, there have been some progress, and some of our colleagues were involved, and I'm sure that Artem Fylypenko can talk more about that, and Hanna Sheres, whom you all know, been involved in crafting a pretty nice naval strategy for Ukraine. We are basically doing it from scratch, frankly, since 2014, but because we don't have a navy to speak of, but, well, we want to have one day. But on Crimea, we don't. And also on the naval front, there have been some alarming developments in recent days. Some able military navy people have been released from their positions. First Kravchenko, and then now Voronchenko himself apparently go, and we don't quite understand what's going on. What does it mean? Because these people have been very much involved in increasing capabilities of the Ukrainian Navy, and now they're leaving. And who's coming in their place? Is it a change of policy from Kyiv or not? So there are many questions there, and unfortunately, Crimea is not something that Ukraine is focusing enough on. Donbass clearly dominates, right? And God knows, I mean, of course, it should be in our thoughts, in our discussions, because that's where you have fighting every day and people dying on our side. That's why it's a priority. But it shouldn't be a priority just at the expense of Crimea. Crimea should be there, and we are not having enough discussion about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vitalii?
Just to add something, in the situation, current situation, I don't see a comprehensive strategy of Ukraine to counter militarization of Crimea by the Russian Federation. At the same time, some counteractions are included in different strategic documents like military doctrine or the marine strategy, etc. Ukraine can plan counteractions and fulfill them in two dimensions, in diplomatic one and military one. In diplomatic, the task of Ukraine is to attract attention of international community to different military actions, to further steps of militarization of occupied Crimea, to military exercises in the peninsula and in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, and so on. But limited in resources in military sphere, Ukraine pays the primary attention to the defense of coastline. Ukrainian Navy conducts different military exercises, for example, near Mariupol on the coast of the Sea of Azov to protect the Ukrainian land from possible attacks from the sea, and etc. And to increase Ukrainian military presence in the Sea of Azov. I will give you an example that this year we have not seen any stops of vessels going to and from Mariupol and Berdyansk in the Sea of Azov by the Russian Federation. They were stopped only in the Kerch Strait, but not in the open sea, because they were escorted by Ukrainian military ships. So it is a good result of increased, not so much, but still increased military presence of Ukrainian Navy in the Sea of Azov. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitalii. And do you have other comments? Because I see that Volodymyr Dubovyk wrote a question to Nika Chitadze.
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, it was related to the experience of Georgia, related to the resolving the problem of territorial integrity, and by this way somehow to make some comparative analysis of the problems related to Crimea, related to the Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district. So, with your permission, what I would like to mention here, that first of all, by this way, we know here that about the similarity, yes, in the both cases, those territories are occupied, and I mean on the territory of Georgia and Ukraine, those territories are occupied and annexed. But with regard to the Russian tactics, yes, okay, in case of Crimea, as you know here, that Russia declares that Crimea is a part of Russia, that historically, by this way, Crimea was belonged to the Russian Federation, yes, and from the other side, with regard to Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district, official Kremlin, as you know, declared that Abkhazia and so-called Republic of South Ossetia, there are independent states, by this way, there are the new realities in this regard. So, what I want to say here, yes, okay, first of all, I think that Georgia and Ukraine, as the two friend countries, I mean, they should maximally, by this way, use the international tribune, for example, the General Assembly of the United Nations, for example, OSCE, for example, Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and other important international institutions. By this way, yes, okay. First of all, to always to declare the joint positions related to the Crimea, related to the Abkhazia and the Tkhinvali district. In my point, always by this way, it's important and necessary. And from the other side, I think that also it's important for the Georgian side, I think that to include to the agenda of the international community the issues related to the Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district. Because today, for example, if we take into consideration the sanctions of the West towards Russia, what is one of the main preconditions of the abolishment of sanctions against Russia? If, by this way, Russia fulfills the Minsk agreement, yes, which concerns, as you know, the eastern part of the Ukraine, yes, Donetsk and the Lugansk district. In my point of view, Georgia should use its maximally its diplomatic resource somehow that to include to the agenda, and one of the also the issue that until the problems of Crimea, until the problem of the eastern part of Ukraine, until the problem of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district are not resolved, by this way, West will not abolish, by this way, the sanctions against Russia. It's my point of view, by this way. And I think that Georgia should use those diplomatic resources in this regard. It's very, very important. One very important fact is that we should inform the international community, in my point of view, joint efforts, by this way, related to the history of Crimea, related to the history of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district. It's also very, very important, because as you know that Russia spreads the disinformation of the international community, as if, for example, Crimea belonged to Russia, that how Russia was fighting for Sevastopol, for example, how, by this way, if we ask the population of Crimea, for example, 60% expressed, by this way, during the so-called referendum, to join Russia. Because of this, but after we, of course, joined this territory in spring of 2014. This is with regard to Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district, for example, so-called South Ossetia, yes, Comrade Putin, yes, I cannot call him Mr., it's Comrade Putin, Tavarish, yes, okay, it's communist name, as we know, know here, because Comrade Putin once mentioned in 2005 that the disintegration of USSR, it was a great geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. He mentions that how, by this way, Georgia was implementing the pressure over the Abkhazian people, over the Ossetian people, by this way, and how, by this way, Russia is the survivor of those territories, and neither Abkhazia nor Tkhinvali district have never belonged to the Georgia. It's against the damage of the history. It's damage of the history because we know here that neither Crimea is belongs to Russia, it's not Russian historic land, and Abkhazia and Georgia, the Tkhinvali district always they were part of Georgia. There were many, by this way, maps, for example, from the ancient period of Kolkita Kingdom, etc., yes, related to the maps of the old unified Georgia to the ancient period, middle centuries, that where, by this way, it is proved as belonging to Georgia, those two historic regions. With regard to Crimea, we know here that about the Kuchuk-Kainarji agreement, 1774, by this way, yes, between Ottoman Empire and Russia, by this way, and by this way, it was recognized the independence of Crimea Khaganate from the Ottoman Empire. And later, we know how the Ekaterina II, by this way, yes, okay, so occupied this territory in the 1783. Before, for example, this territory never belonged to Russia. And the same with regard to the two historic parts of Georgia. I mean, Abkhazian people and Ossetian people, they had always as equal right with the Georgian people within the unified the Georgia. So why I'm talking here about it, that historic justice, by this way, by the historic justice, it should be informed the international community here. Yes, okay, this is the issue. Yeah, of course, they do not recognize, by this way, Crimea as a part of Russia or Abkhazia as an independent state, but from the other side, anyway, by this way, information policy should be implemented by this way. Because, for example, majority of population in Crimea, they really believe, I mean, for example, first of all, ethnic Russians, not, of course, Crimean Tatars, that this territory, by this way, it was belonged to Russia. And many, by this way, Abkhazians and Ossetians in Georgia, they believe that Abkhazia has never been a part of Georgia, South Ossetia has never been part of Georgia, by this way, and Russians, by this way, they are liberators, etc., etc. And we also need, by this way, also to inform our patriots in Crimea, in Abkhazia, in Georgia, in South Ossetia, that those territories has historically they were part of Georgia and Crimea part of Ukraine by this way. Yes, before it was ancient period, we know here, I know about the history of Crimea, about the Scythians, and after by this way Byzantines, about the same with the history of Georgia. I think very important. But very important also issue, what we are doing here related to our compatriots from Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district. For example, medical treatment program. There are about 40,000 inhabitants of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district who, by this way, they come on the territory which is under the control of the central government of Georgia, and they are implemented, by the way, some medical treatment for free of charge for those people. Yes, okay. By this way, of course, the main purpose of Georgian side is what to increase, by this way, somehow the sympathy towards Georgian statehood by the inhabitants from Abkhazia and Tkhinvali district. We implement such type of program. But from the other side, Russia propaganda works, for example, and to assure the inhabitants of the Tkhinvali district, South Ossetia, so-called Abkhazia, that Georgia is obliged to do it because you were under the pressure of Georgians, and now they pay the contribution. Like, for example, how the Germany pays contribution before the Jewish people. Yes, okay, information propaganda. And I think that it's very, very important for the Georgia and for Ukraine to use all type of today the information century, to use the social networks, yes, okay, and to send the real truth about the history of Crimea, about how the Ekaterina II, yes, okay, occupied Crimea by this way, yes, okay, and how by this way the Russia occupied Abkhazia in 1804, Russia Empire, and how by this way thousands and thousands of ethnic Abkhazians during the Crimea Wars, they were exiled from Abkhazia to the Ottoman Empire. So it's very, very long history, but I think information policy, one issue. The second issue, it's interrelated, of course, maximal using of the jointly the international tribune, by this way, by Georgia and Ukraine. It's the second important issue in my point of view related to the, for example, the explanations, the historic history of Crimea, history of Abkhazia. It's very important, of course, here in this regard. So all those, by this way, measures should be implemented by this way, yes, okay. And of course, economic development of Ukraine and economic development of Georgia should be the guarantee of the resolving the problem. Today in Georgia, GDP per capita is $4,000 US. In Russia, it's about 17,000. And of course, many inhabitants from Abkhazia and Fylypenko district, together with this information propaganda of Russia, but at the same time, because of in Russia it's a higher economic standards than in Georgia, they, by this way, see towards Moscow, not towards Tbilisi, by this way. But what will be in the future? And somehow I think that we should resolve this problem according to the Cyprus scenario. You know, in the Cyprus, how the Turkish part of the population expressed the readiness for the rejoining of the Greek and the Turkish part. Cyprus, 64% in 2004, for example, declared during the referendum about they supported the idea of rejoining the Cyprus. Why? Because standard of living in the Greek part of Cyprus is higher than in the Turkish part. Because the same we should implement, in my point of view, to increase the standard of living. And by this way, I think that inhabitants of Crimea, inhabitants of Donetsk and Lugansk district, inhabitants of Abkhazia and Fylypenko district, of course, they will have more sympathy towards Georgian and Ukrainian statehood. This is my point of view. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Nika. I would like to give the floor to Artem Fylypenko. He is head of the National Institute for Security Studies Southern Region Research Unit. Artem? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Only some remarks adding to for speakers. At first, if we say about hybrid warfare and hybrid threats, I think we should include practically all aspects of security. What I mean that first, as it was mentioned, economically, practically all economies in Black Sea region countries have a lot of loss, especially negative. Are you hearing me? Yeah. Especially, as I said, so-called 3T. It means transport, trade, and tourism. These three branches are important, especially for Black Sea region countries, and especially for, as we say about Ukraine, for southern region. Yes, and especially for Odessa region, which I represent. That's why I think that even in summer and in autumn, we will receive a new wave of political instability, economic instability, which are not connected directly with political decisions, but will be connected with social economic decisions. Yes, it's a first. The second point, frozen conflicts. Frozen conflicts, maybe the main threat or the main negative expectation was that so-called unrecognized countries, yes, so-called, yeah, or separate enclaves, do not have possibilities for preventing epidemic, yes. And as we see, for example, in Transnistria, in the beginning, it was some collaboration between official powers and separatists. But at the end, separatists chose confrontation scenario, and practically all efforts to unite, yes, to unite two parts in the face of common evil, yes, was failed. That's why I think the same the same situation in Georgia, in relations with Abkhazia and Tshinvali region. Maybe what should the third point, which I want to add. We discussed now practically all military aspects, security aspects. Maybe it's necessary to say more about green agenda. Green agenda and problems of environment. That means that, for example, occupation of Crimea. Now Ukraine do not control environment in Black Sea region. Yes, they do not control situation on coastline, Crimea coastline. In Donbass, we also have practical situation which is closer to ecological catastrophe. Yeah? Then in other regions, I think the same problems we can find both in Georgia and, for example, in Moldova. It means Transnistria, which controls Dnistr, and Odessa, for example, receive water from Dnistr. And Chisinau also receive water from Dnistr. And I think that we can, for example, unite our efforts and of Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldavian experts, or maybe politicians, to put a green agenda, especially look from on the environment security. Yes, as one of points. Yes, not only military aspects. And for example, as an example, I can say about Black Sea Commission, because for example, Ukrainian had to blockade work of Black Sea Commission because Russians want to propose peoples from Crimea to this commission. Yes, that's why we need maybe new level of agreements between Ukraine and Romania, Ukraine and Turkey, Ukraine and Georgia, Ukraine and Bulgaria, about solving this problem. Yes, because of Russia occupation. In information question warfare, it was mentioned about problems of so-called laboratories. Yes, it was not the first maybe example, because during an epidemic of measles, yes, especially in Moldova, it was also in information as this epidemic was a result of working of laboratorium in Odessa and in Chisinau. Yes, that's why this is an issue had more roots in our past. Yes, but what about information working? Not only warfare, but information working. Now we see also attempts, or maybe to make a confrontation between countries of Black Sea region. The last example is, for example, relation between Bulgaria and Ukraine. You know, this event when Bulgarian parliament declared they support Bulgarian minority, which is in Odessa region. They are against administrative reforms because it threats Bulgarian identity of all Bulgarian minorities. I think this declaration of Bulgarian parliament is a result of absence of any information work of our Ukrainian information work in Black Sea countries. Because in Bulgaria, for example, for us, for Ukrainian, is terra incognita, and we are also terra incognita for Bulgarians and Bulgaria. Maybe practically the same, not practically, but practically the same, I think, in any of Black Sea countries, and the same situation. Our knowledge, not only, I mean, not knowledge of experts, but knowledge of ordinary people, maybe people who are interested in situation, not at zero level, but a level maybe +1. That's why I think that it is necessary for us maybe not only cooperate in our circle of experts, but trying to make more information for our colleagues, for our countries about Georgia, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and make some cross-countries informative relations. publishing in not only using social networks is very important, by publishing in maybe summary articles in translation, because the problem is that we are now speaking English, yes? It's a language of expert community. But at the same time, I think that maybe practically I do not know Georgian. I a little bit know Romanian and a little bit know Bulgarian, yeah? That's why for me to write an article or publish or to organize publications is very difficult. I think maybe cooperation in this level also can help us maybe to confront, to stop maybe Russian influence in Black Sea region, especially in the information sphere. I finished.
Thank you very much, Artem. We have a comment from Nika Chitadze about environmental issue.
Yeah, I would like to make my comment on very interesting position, yes, which was presented by Mr. Artem. So related to the environment, yes, again, in my point of view, in the agenda of the sanctions of the West towards Russia, I think should be, in this case, included the issues how the Russia, by this way, violates environment. Yes, okay. We know here that near the Crimea, I know that Russian companies that they are implementing the searching activities related to the producing the shale gas, for example, and with regard to Georgia, also the territory of Abkhazia. By this way, yes, Russia implements in this case also illegal searching activities, geological, geophysical activities. Russian company Rosneft, yes, related to the production of oil from the Black Sea equator. Of course, first of all, it's a violation of the international conventions related to in the framework of international maritime law, convention of 1982, related, which you know determines the principle of the territorial waters of the country, the 12-mile zone, yes, okay, and economic zone, by this way, and it's a violation of the Helsinki rules, which were adopted in the year of 1977. Accordingly, I think maybe again Georgia and Ukraine should jointly inform, for example, UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, on this issue related to the violations environment in both regions, especially in the marine zone. Furthermore, I would like to say, for example, that international community lacks information how Russia, for example, yes, took the sank, yes, okay, from the Abkhazian coast before the Olympic Games in Sochi in 24, and this sank after it was used as a constructive material related to the Olympic infrastructure in during the organization of the Winter Olympic Games in Sochi. It's other question why Russia, by this way, got the right to organize the Olympic Games in Sochi and after organization of the World Championship in football in 2018. It's also some question related to the International Olympic Committee and related to the FIFA. It's other problem, by this way. Yes, okay. And so after determined that Russia was occupied, but before, so the international community support is a dialogue regime, reset policy. It's also, in my point of view, it was some mistakes towards Russia. But now the international community knows what does it mean, the Kremlin policy, I mean military, information, environmental, by this way, economic, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. Now we have a tight schedule, and I want to move to our new participants. I see that Mykhailo Samus has joined us and Irina Marzas from Moldova. So I would like to give the floor to Mykhailo Samus. He is Deputy Director for International Affairs of the Center for Army Conversion and Disarmament Studies. You have 7 minutes. Thank you. Mykhailo, do you hear us?
Okay, now?
Yes, now, yeah.
Great. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this very interesting event. Unfortunately, I just joined it because I had another meeting online. The problem of our pandemic situation that we have even more meetings, I think, even before, because we can be in different places in the world at the same time. Nevertheless, I'd like to say several words about the situation in Black Sea, our estimation of CACDS and my personal estimations. First of all, in our estimations, because of the situation with virus, we had the situation where NATO and European Union now focusing on itself, basically, and reducing of military exercises in NATO and reducing of other activities in Black Sea together with comparing with Russian activities in military sphere, shows us that in next several months our problems, I mean the conflict with Russia for Ukraine is out of the spotlight of our Western partners, and this is not very good news for all of countries of Black Sea, because Russia is going to conduct the Kavkaz 2020 strategic military exercise in September with a huge amount of military forces involved, together with 20th Army, with 8th Army, and all of actually forces on the southern strategic direction, together, of course, with Black Sea, and together with other group of ships from the Northern Fleet and Baltic Fleet, I believe. What does it mean? That in period August, September, October of 2020, it will be the massive concentration of Russian military forces on southern strategic direction, and at this time, together with NATO out of this area, and NATO, well, I think still will be on the neutralization of consequences of pandemic situation in Europe, and actually connection between United States and Europe on military sphere. Russia will try to even to improve on A280 zone in Black Sea and try to enforce even more on dominance in Black Sea and Azov Sea area. And I think that several elements during Kavkaz 2020 Russia could try to conduct. First of all, it's exercises in Azov Sea and Kerch Strait, which has some new tragic consequences for navigation through Kerch Strait and situation Azov Sea, when Russia is controlling everything now, unfortunately, because Ukraine is still building a new naval base and it's still building a new naval forces in Azov Sea, but not without great success yet. Even we have some plans of getting new ships from United States, but it's still in the future. Second, we believe that Russia will try to conduct some exercises close to Serpent Island and stolen Ukrainian gas platform, which is a great area, a great field for Russian activities to try to create so-called blockade gates between Serpent Island and Ukrainian stolen gas platform, because only 50 kilometers between these 2 points, and because Ukraine cannot have proper instruments, naval instruments, to confrontate, to stop Russia in doing it. I think Russia during these exercises in September will try to exercise very similar instruments or very similar methodics like during the Kerch Strait activities in 2018, 2019 especially. One more element what Russia could exercise during Kavkaz 2020, I think they could try to close the huge areas of Black Sea because of military exercises, and in this case they will try to close or blockade Ukrainian port or navigation to Ukrainian ports in Black Sea like Odessa, Mykhailo, and Russia can show Ukraine what kind of catastrophic consequences could be if Russia one day will close navigation to Ukrainian ports in Black Sea. It will be psychological pressure on Ukraine, and of course, maybe they will try to exercise the capabilities to create a land corridor, famous land corridor from Russia to Crimea, because we know that the forecast saying that this year Russia will have a huge problems in water supplying to Crimea, and a lot of analysts started to say that Russia can conduct some military operations to create land corridor. I'm not so sure that Russia will try to do it during this Kavkaz 2020 exercise, but I'm sure they will try to show Ukraine the capabilities, and of course to the NATO countries. My final estimation that we should expect during next months that Russia will try to conduct more and more activities in southern flank and Black Sea, Azov Sea, to show the capabilities to create a total A2AD zone in this area and call this area like Russian Lake. And unfortunately, Ukraine and NATO and Georgia, we don't have any military instruments, at least this year, to stop Russian Russian intentions on this direction, unfortunately. And I could predict that this year will be very tough and very difficult and in Black Sea, so we should be ready for these developments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mykhailo, for contribution. Now I would like to give the floor to Marzak Elena, Executive Director of Information and Documentation Center of NATO from Moldova. Elena, do you hear us? Elena? No? Okay. I see that other participant has joined, Andriy Veselovsky. He is advisor to Director of the National Institute for Strategic Studies. Do you have any remarks about our topic of our online seminar?
Thank you very much for naming me. I'm still listening. I will express my thoughts a little bit later. Thank you. Elena Marzak is here. I see her.
I see. Okay, Elena, do you hear us? Thank you. Thank you. Elena. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Okay. I'm sorry, I joined you later. I joined later as our colleague, Mr. Samus, mentioned. We have a lot of conferences now, and we are happy that civil society, at least, is very active in this period. I'll be very short. I'm sorry if I'll repeat myself regarding the situation in Moldova, because we have a lot of common things, as the response of the governmental institution, low response to this crisis, the fake news and disinformation. And I would like to stick the attention on the effect of the fake news and disinformation for the moment in the Republic of Moldova, and I see for the Black Sea region in generally. You know very well the political situation in the Republic of Moldova, and they used this state of emergency for their political promotion, and we have a very active coming from Russian Federation regarding this virus called COVID-19, and of course our society is divided, and they are more trusting the Russian Federation sources or the Russian Federation. We have the polarization of the society and the weakness of our security and the human security. People don't trust the government. Yes, we agree that the government has a weak response to the crisis. We continue to have deaths and the people that are contaminated by the virus, and all these vulnerabilities are used by the external partners, especially Russian Federation. More than this, you know very well the situation regarding the credit. The Russian Federation would like to help Republic of Moldova. It's a trap. It was not approved by the Supreme Security Court, and now, even today, our president unofficially started the presidential electoral period. You know that it is planned for the autumn this year. So, as a short conclusion, the Russian influence is more and more active in the Republic of Moldova. They are now using all the tools, political parties, non-governmental organizations, mass media, economic instruments such credits, and having Moldova in a trap. We have active exercises in Transnistrian territory, and less exercises because of the COVID of our army. We have a lot of assistance from European countries, but it's not well informed here in the Republic of Moldova that we receive assistance from European Union and NATO, and the government is more putting the accent on the assistance coming from Russian Federation or China. So this are weakening more and more the citizens' sympathy toward the European Union integration direction. So all these facts are helping in promoting their the policy of the Socialist Party, and as I said, it started already the presidential election, and this is creating chaos in our society. People don't know whom to trust, and they are more influenced by these conspiracy theories sent and infecting the internet and social media sources, and population are trusting this kind of information and less the official information coming from the ministries. In case of collaboration with, for example, with the partners from and our neighbors from Black Sea region, Ukraine and Romania, you see that we, for the moment, Republic Moldova have a low area of cooperation with the our neighbors, and even we have like a diplomatic scandal because of the declaration of our Prime Minister Kiku regarding the Romanian diplomat in the European Union. And all these facts are putting Moldova in a very weak situation. So we are in a security trap. We don't know exactly who are our partners and who is assisting us. I mean, we, the citizens, and it's low information about the post-crisis plan and how Moldova will recuperate after this situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Now we still have some commentaries, and we will start from Vitalii Martyniuk.
Yeah, I have just 2 points to add to the discussion. First of all, Artem mentioned attempts of the Russian Federation to legitimize the illegal occupation and illegal annexion of Crimea with the use of international organizations in the Black Sea region. And Russia, despite of negative impact of COVID-19, on tourism sphere, Russia uses any possibility in this sphere also to legitimize annexation of Crimea in a wider Black Sea region. For example, at the end of last year, Russia presented different objects of tourism from Crimea at the International Tourism Fair in Serbia, and Ukrainian embassy there protested against these attempts. And we know that Russia uses another possibilities, international fairs, international exhibitions in tourism spheres for this purpose. And the second point, with regard to negative situation in the sphere of protection of human rights in Crimea, I think that international organizations, notably the United Nations, EU, Council of Europe, OSCE, must insist on Russia's admissions to the monitoring missions to monitor the situation with human rights in occupied Crimea and in the occupied territories of the Donetsk and Lugansk region. And in case of Russia's refusal, additional sanctions should be accompanied this refusal. It is necessary to press Russia at the international level to follow its international obligations in humanitarian spheres, first of all in the sphere of human rights protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitalii. We have already exceeded our time, and if you have a commentary, yes, we will start from Andriy.
Thank you very much. First of all, I appreciate much the presentation of Mykhailo Samus. He mentioned a lot of future challenges to Ukraine, and this future is not so far. I mean, he was mostly speaking about the next 3-4 months. It's important to notice it in order to understand better the situation of Ukraine in general. What I have to say, what we've heard from our Moldovan colleague, and it applies also to some extent to Georgia and to Bulgaria. Those are weak partners, and they are mainly concentrated on their own problems and don't see the question of security and stability in Black Sea area as the most important point for them.
important moment for them. So, three main partners remain: Turkey, Ukraine, and Russian Federation. What Russia is doing, we understand all. What Turkey is doing, Turkey is looking south and east, and that's a problem. But the biggest problem is what Ukraine is doing. I just want to remind you that a lot of experts recently expressed their uneasiness about Ukraine's activity with NATO and the European Union. Today's publication in Ukrainska Pravda by Panchenko and another journalist is only one reminder of that biggest problem, what Ukraine is doing about its own activity in Black Sea. This is the biggest dilemma. More activity we do, more Russia replies. This is one option. The other option, less activity we do, more Russia press on us because we don't have, we are not active. So this is the question to our political. Whether we activate ourselves in the Black Sea region with NATO, EU integration, with buying more ships, speeding rearmament and other things, or we just go out of this game and wait and see what happens without us. So the decision should be taken on the highest level after good and thorough analysis, and it should be taken as quick as possible. Now we are losing our time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we can still have some comments. If not, okay, Valeriy.
Yes, just going back to the issue of a coherent, comprehensive strategy regarding the Crimea, I could easily respond who actually has this strategy. The Majlis of Crimean Tatars. They have a clear understanding and that Crimea is the territory where Crimean Tatars were born. And for last 3 years we have two projects of legal acts laying in Verkhovna Rada, formed by Mustafa Djemilev, Rafat Chubarov, that have to be adopted, but they are not. With the main idea transforming of Crimea, legal status of Crimea, its understanding that de facto it's territory of Russia, unfortunately, but legally transforming the status on the autonomy of Crimean Tatars. Crimea is the land of Crimean Tatars. I'm too far from saying that it's a good idea. It's a precedent that could be used by some other negative forces, let's say, in Ukraine, talking to the minorities issues. But still, they have that position, and it's an idea. And what can I conclude just after listening all speeches? We need solidarity. All we need in that region, the solidarity and the unity. Unfortunately, even if we unite our fleets in Ukraine, Georgia, Romania, Bulgaria, and even Turkey, it will not be enough to deter the Russian. Russia had a huge potential, and it's a big issue how we could act together. And how we could include all our efforts within NATO. It's practice that NATO unfortunately dividing, making the clear division between the NATO countries and non-NATO countries, and Georgia and Moldova and Ukraine are obviously non-NATO countries. I believe that we need to act together to Bucharest 9 countries that actually represent the eastern flank of NATO, and the higher level of understanding what is happening here, the realistic approach. But we need, the three countries I mentioned, we need to show our realistic approach not on the paper, but with the new initiatives, to be very proactive. Vitalii said a few ideas, and also in my report I put a few ideas how we could make the joint projects in OSCE, for example, using this platform on Guam, on maybe in new initiatives on military ground we could found. So we need to be proactive. If we will not be proactive, unfortunately, that Russian leg will be a reality. So, and the future of all that region will be will not be very good and very positive. So it's our joint challenge and joint threat we realistically understand. So I hope that solidarity within this region will come. Thank you.
Okay, I see that our seminar is still quite active, and if someone wants to comment, especially from participants, maybe you still have some questions. Okay, so it's time maybe for final words. Nika, maybe you want to say something, and maybe Marc Johnson will add something. So we will have 1 minute for you to say this words.
First of all, yes, thank you very much for the organization, so important event, and also thank you for the to congratulate Georgia with the Independence Day. Yeah, really, we celebrated the Day of Independence. Yesterday, and let's hope that one day, by this way, today is 80% of the territory of Georgia is independent and free. Yes, 20% is occupied, but I hope that one day is 100% of the territory of Georgia, 100% of the territory of Ukraine will be independent. The same it concerns also Moldova, the same concerns the other countries which have the territorial problems, etc., etc. So, and of course, everything will be possible, I think, to resolve the different type of socio-economic, political, environmental, legal, etc., problems with joint efforts. And I think that by this way today, by the exchanges of different points of views, including the issues related to the Black Sea security and including the issues of the future perspectives of the joint cooperation between Georgia and Ukraine and other countries from the Black Sea region. Yes, okay. So I think that it will create, by this way, to contribute positively, yes, related to the further cooperation among all the other nations and countries. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Nika. Marc, do you have a few words?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much again for inviting me to participate. This really is always an honor for me, and I enjoy seeing you and talking with you guys. Nika and all Georgians present, I want to congratulate you on your Independence Day. Bravo, bravo. What I also want to do is I'd like to agree to hold another webinar like this later in the summer. I think that this is really crucial that we get our alumni groups from all the Black Sea countries together more than just once a year like we're currently doing. I think this needs to happen quarterly at least, just because operating in a regional coordinated method and environment really will bear much more fruit than acting independently the whole time. So I think the Marshall Center needs to approach your region as more of a collective more frequently rather than just once a year. So let's talk about having another one of these later in the summer. And the way that you guys organized it at the Center for International Security was absolutely perfect. Couldn't have done a better job myself. So I think that we should continue with the same format if nobody has any problems with that. And we'll keep talking about it, and we'll organize the next meeting. How does that sound?
Mark, thank you very much. From our side, from Center for International Security, me and Valeriy want also to thank all participants, to thank representatives of alumni unions of Marshall Center in Ukraine, Konstantin Kononenko, Nika Chitadze, and Mark Johnson from Alumni Relations Specialist from Marshall Center. So thank you very much for your participation. As you see, it's quite interesting, and we will hope that in several months, several weeks, we will organize another online seminar in this format. Thank you very much.
Excellent idea. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Goodbye. Thank you. Bye.